Disclaimer! The following episode contains spoilers for Joker 2019. Don't go crying to your mum if we spoil it for you. You've been warned. Welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. And this week, smile! We're talking about Joker! Cue the music! Hello there, Capers, and as I said, welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. My name is Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where I talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and are joined each week by a very special different guest. I am joined by two very special different guests this week. Give it up for Jillian Diblasio.
Hey!
And also give it up for Alex Mirabal. Wait, where's Alex? Where's she got? Oh, hello, there's a note here. Oh, there's a note where Alex should be. I'll read it. Dear asshole, if you think I'm going to review Joker with you, you've got another thing coming. Never talk to me about this again or I will murder you in your sleep. Okay, so I guess it's just me and Jillian then. Yeah, Alex not a big fan of this character or this. She basically said, not gonna do it. No way. She's usually my go-to person for DC movies. But
I mean, I saw on her Facebook, she was like, everything was just like anti-Joker movie for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, and not for the first time when it comes to a DC movie. We kind of disagree. Usually she thinks the movies are great, and I think they range from okay to absolute dog shit. I fucking love this movie.
Yeah, no, I thought I loved it too.
Yeah, it's really good. Now here's the thing. There's a lot of warranted and unwarranted controversy surrounding this movie for various different things, various different reasons. Now, I believe that every single movie deserves to be judged as a movie, regardless of whatever's going on in the real world around it. I also think that no movie exists in a vacuum, that the stuff that's going around it should be talked about and should be discussed. So what we're going to do is, we will talk about the movie, and then we will talk about the stuff that's going on around it. Okay, we'll give each of it its due, but we'll sort of separate, and we will divide, and thereby conquer. That
sounds more than fair.
And so, I mean, God, this is the whole... Okay, so, first of all, the concept of a supervillain getting their own spin-off origin movie, it's been tried before and utterly failed before. Suicide Squad. Jared Leto is not a fan of this movie. He did not like the fact that this movie was being made. But you don't own the Joker, Jared. You don't own it.
I'm going to make a bold statement here, and it's that Jared Leto is an asshole.
I don't think he's an arsehole. I just think that he's a bit of a pretentious git. Just like...
I mean... He lost me when his Suicide Squad came out and they cut all of his stuff, and he said something to the effect of, well, when I die, maybe you'll see all the footage that wasn't shown in Suicide Squad, referencing to Heath Ledger, and I'm like, you piece of shit. No, I'm done.
Okay, then I've changed my opinion. He is an arsehole.
Yeah, exactly.
He is a pretentious arsehole. I didn't know he did that shit.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. And I was like, I'm done. So when he's like, oh, I'm upset about this movie, I'm like, go cry in your fucking corner with your dead rats and shit, whatever the fuck you were doing on that movie.
God, oh, God. Joaquin Phoenix didn't do what you did. There's reports that he once, left the set a couple of times just because he got a bit too... not strung out, stressed out, I guess, by what he was doing. But that was the limit of what he did. Heath Ledger, we said it before, all he did was, he took a diary, locked himself up in his hotel room a couple of times when he wasn't filming, and when he was filming, he just muttered in the corner a couple of times. That's all he did. And, Joaquin Phoenix and Heath Ledger both got this character way better than you did, Jared. I'm sorry your scenes got cut. Maybe you could have been an okay Joker, but I guess we'll never know. It's not entirely your fault, but it's kind of your fault. But we're not here to talk about you. We're here to talk about this movie, and this movie comes to us from a Scott Silver screenwriter who is he's done a couple of things, including uncredited rewrites with James Vanderbilt on X-Men Origins Wolverine. And also comes to us from director Todd Phillips, mainly known for the Hangover movies, and that film that a couple of people saw, no one really liked, War Dogs.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how somebody that came from comedy created this.
Do you know what?
I'm just impressed.
Because I mean, there's many themes in this movie. One of the themes is, like, one of the quotes is, "I thought my life was a tragedy. Turns out it's a comedy." I think comedy people understand drama sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes a bit better than people who do drama mainly. Because, as anyone who knows anything about comedy will tell you, the fundamental foundation of comedy is tragedy, is misery. As someone who is kind of funny, I think I get that kind of bit. Shut up, I'm funny! And yeah, so it's I just think that they get it a bit more, and it allows so many more different avenues. You could do an entirely po-faced, very serious, deep drama movie about the Joker, but I think unless you get the comedy aspect of it, it's never going to be all it can be. And I think this movie is, for the better or worse, all it can be. So let's get started, shall we? We've got a lot to talk about. We start... I thought this took place in the late 70s. Turns out it takes place in the early 80s. And we start with this guy named Arthur Fleck. What a great name, jeez. I mean, his mum is named Penny Fleck, and on their mailbox it says P Fleck, and it's like, ugh. And that conjures up a lot of images. Ugh. And straight off the bat, the people who made this movie said, and I thought it was kind of weird the way they said it. They said, "Oh, this isn't your typical Joker movie. This isn't like what DC fans might be expecting from a Joker movie." I'm just like, dude, Joker fans, people who actually understand the character of the Joker and aren't just like whiny incel cry bullies, like, understand that the Joker, when it comes to his origin story, has no origin story. He has origin stories. The Joker himself once famously said, "If I'm going to have a backstory, I prefer it to be multiple choice." So, like, I will be doing my Joker impression many times throughout this review. Just want to warn you straight off the bat.
That's fine.
I love it. And so we get it. We understand that every time you tell the Joker's origin story, it's going to be different, even as far as superhero origin movies go. So we get it. So he's not called Jack Napier or Jeremiah Belasco or whatever his name was from Gotham. We get it. We understand. So this is a different guy. He's a clown. He's a professional clown, and he's living in Gotham City. It's not some other city. It's Gotham. And Gotham, surprisingly enough, is portrayed as not a very nice place to live. Why does anyone live in Gotham?
That was the one thing that I really appreciate about this movie, is that it's like Gotham actually looks like a shithole, which actually makes sense why Batman needs to clean it up eventually. It's like, oh yeah, this is a problem.
You've got a corrupt elite, you've got disenfranchised and very, very underprivileged working class. You've got a garbage cleaner strike, which means that diseases are now rampant. And this is a great, meta commentary on the American infrastructure right now.
Yep.
I know it's set in the 80s, but I don't know, maybe visit modern day Detroit, see what you think.
Well, also in the 80s, New York City was having a huge problem where it was just disgusting. There was trash everywhere. So it's it both comments on the United States now and the United States in the 80s, specifically New York.
Ah, the American dream.
Yep.
And so it's not a very nice place to live, but, maybe Arthur's trying to bring a little light into it. But unfortunately, he's not doing too well. He suffers from severe depression. He has been in a mental institution before. So he's not doing well, but he's trying to bring some light into the world by being a clown. And he's just on the street advertising everything is must go, closing down sale for this shop. The sign that he's got, and we all saw the trailer. We all saw a bunch of kids steal the sign. He chases after them, and they fucking beat him in the alley. And he just lies down and takes. And what's sort of interesting is when he's getting kicked on the ground by these kids, he sort of puts his hands in between his legs in the similar way that a child might.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of like him acting very childlike throughout the movie. I feel like that's like the first sign.
Yeah, that's that sign that something's not quite right with him. Second sign is the very next scene after we get like the big Joker title flash on the screen. We see him in a meeting with his social worker, mental health therapist, a city mandated person who's there to help him. And maybe doesn't do the best job, but it's clearly trying. And we see him just laughing hysterically in her face. Just like, oh, going off right off the bat with a Joker laugh. Okay. And then he sort of does this like choking thing in his throat while he's doing it. It's just like, okay, all right. So he's laughing. What's so funny? And the person's just sort of staring at him. And then he just sort of stops laughing. And it's very disconcerting. We don't know why he laughed. We find out later. But in that moment, we don't know why he's laughing. And then he shows her his journal that she asked him to write. And he says, it's partially a journal, but it's also a joke book. Because I want to be a stand-up comedian. And so I'm writing lots of jokes in there. And this book gives us, first off, a couple of quotes that are kind of impactful throughout the movie. One of which is, I hope my death is worth more sense than my life.
Yes.
It's pretty chilling. It's a pretty impactful line. And another line that comes up later in the movie, as we'll bring out right now, that I thought is perhaps the most impactful, that a lot of people actually have been sharing on social media and things like that, is that the worst, paraphrasing, the worst thing about having a mental illness is that people expect you to behave like you don't have one.
Yeah, that to me is the line that really got to me.
Got to me as well, jeez.
Yeah.
It's, as someone who has known people who have mental illness, as someone who has cards on the table recently, had his own mental struggles this year, it's kind of, it's because here's the thing. When he's leaving the social services meeting, he goes on the train, there's a kid who's staring at him, and he pulls a couple of funny faces for him, because, he's a little kid, he wants to be nice for the kid. His mum yells at him for doing that, and then he starts laughing. He says, I'm sorry, I can't help it. And he hands her a card, because he can't speak, because he's laughing so hard. And it says, I have a neurological disorder that compels me to laugh uncontrollably no matter what my mood. I can't help it. Please return the card. And which is an actual thing that can actually happen, and that's something he has to live with. And it's just like, oh god, so he laughs at inappropriate moments even though he doesn't want to. That's why I was choking. He's trying to stop himself from laughing, but he can't help it. And you can imagine the social embarrassment that sort of neurological disorder can cause.
Yeah.
It's a hard life that Arthur leads, and he lives with his mum, played by that person who I've seen in other things, doing that sort of airy, flighty, not all quite there, disaffective. She was in 6 Feet Under.
I haven't seen 6 Feet Under.
Neither have I, but I've heard she's in it. Well, I've seen her in other things before, and pretty good actor, but she's doing a kind of similar thing here. And his mum we wonder right away, is his mum all there as well? But we don't actually find out until much later, one way or the other with that. And she used to work for Thomas Wayne. Yes, the Waynes are in this movie. They're very much alive. Not for long. And she says, like, hey, Thomas Wayne will help us out. Well, like, I know we're living very, very nicely now, but Thomas Wayne will help us out. And Arthur's like, what? No, you used to work for him like 30 years ago. Like, he's not going to do anything now. Come on. And meanwhile, he's busy running for mayor because he's like, Thomas Wayne, I'm going to fix this place. I'm going to fix this town. It's all going to be great. And so they spend a lot of time talking about that and also watching this show called the Murray Franklin Show. Murray Franklin being played by Robert De Niro. Out of all the people I thought could be in this movie, Robert De Niro was not one I would have immediately pegged. But he's in it. And he fits right in.
Yeah, I mean, I think seeing and like hearing about how like Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy and Taxi Driver is a huge influence in this movie. It definitely makes sense that Robert De Niro is in the movie, but if like you didn't know that going in, I could see why you would think like, well, why is Robert De Niro in this movie?
Because
sort of thing.
Because this movie is almost like a high budget indie movie. Sort of. I mean, I have my own problems with indie movies. Yeah, but it's not. One of the things that attracted Joaquin Phoenix to it was that it wasn't a typical studio movie. Some aspects of it are, but not all of it are. It's a bit outside the mold, especially for a superhero movie. I wouldn't even say I would call this a superhero movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I don't get why people are like saying that it is. It's really not.
It's superhero adjacent.
Yeah.
It's there's no superpowers, there's no crime fighting, there's no he's not even a supervillain, as we'll get into later. It's we'll talk about it as we go. Another character that we meet is a neighbor of Arthur's, played by Zazie Beetz, who I swear, like, we know her name because it's listed in the credits, but I swear her name is not mentioned at all in the movie. Can you remember her name?
I'm trying to think because, like, I remember after the movie her name was Sophie, but I don't remember if I got that information because I read something about the movie or if I got it through the actual movie. I know her name is revealed. If it is revealed, it's very late in the movie. It's not like right away.
What we know about is, like, they meet in the elevator, going into their apartments, and she's got a kind of precocious kid, and they have a little moment when the elevator stops, where she pretends to, like, she mimes blowing her brains out. They have a little joke, and then as they're leaving the elevator, he says, "Hey!" She turns around. He repeats the mime in a much more exaggerated way, and she gets sort of awkward. Okay, yeah, we did that, bye. Then he stalks her.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
As you do.
As you do. He basically follows her around, and then later on she knocks on his door and says, "Hey, were you stalking me?" And he's like, yeah, sorry. She's like, "That's okay." Really? Like, really? That's okay with you? Okay, fine, whatever turns you on, I guess. I guess that time in Deadpool really did a number on you, Zazie.
I mean, at that point, I kind of knew the twist.
See, I didn't, though. I was confused, but for once I didn't pick up on it, so we're not going to get into that just yet.
Yeah, I'll get into why later.
Yeah. And, so meanwhile, Arthur, he works at this, I always called it a clown shop. It's the place where he and other clowns, go and get hired out. And there's a couple of, people who work there. His boss, who doesn't listen to him when he says, like, the sign was stolen and, like, basically yells at him. His co-worker, Randall, who offers to lend him a gun for protection after he hears that he's been jumped and beaten up. And another colleague, Gary, a British little person, who's probably the only one that's nice to him, like, completely and unapologetically nice to him in that workplace. And so Arthur gets a job attending at a children's hospital, doing like a kind of like, here's the thing, he dances and he smiles and he jumps around when he's doing his clown thing, but he's sort of like mouthing the words to "if you're happy and you know it" whilst he's doing it. even when he's trying to be funny as a clown, it's still a little bit creepy. Like, I get why the kids
Yeah.
like it, but as an adult, I'm just thinking like, ha, this guy really needs to bring his A game next time. Jeez. And his gun drops out of his costume in the middle of this children's hospital. And it's a funny moment. So he's fired. Yeah.
As you do.
As would be expected, bringing a gun to a children's hospital. It's like, hey, it was a prop. It was part of my act. It's just like, yeah, no. Like, who brings a prop gun to a clown act? Like, is it a squirt gun? No, I do not think so. I do not think so. Randall then lies that Arthur, like, bought the gun himself. Full on betrays him. Arthur is not happy about that. So this is Arthur at his lowest. This is a mentally ill, depressed person who not has a great home life, now has no job, is stuck in a city that is tearing itself apart at the seams, and he's on a train. There's three guys picking on this woman. Woman leaves. They start picking on Arthur and start beating him up, and takes out the gun and he shoots them. And oh boy, it's an intense scene. Shoots the two. One tries to get away. He basically tracks the guy down and murders him. You might say the other two were self-defense. This guy full on kills him. He runs away, and it's just like, okay, so yeah, this is the start of the downward spiral. This is when the Joker is born. Now, spoiler alert, there's no scene where he falls into a vat of chemicals. There's no mirror. What? Mirror! There's no that scene. There's no... This is when the Joker begins, I think. And then so he manages to get away and isn't discovered at the scene, keeps the gun, and the whole city divides itself in two. Half the city, basically the rich and the elite, say, oh my god, he killed them because they were rich. How awful. You shouldn't have done that, clown-faced killer. And the other half of the city's like, good. It's good that you killed them for being rich. Clown-faced killer. We love you. And it kind of speaks to the way people react to tragedy, both in America and I suppose globally, I guess. Like, these are universal themes. Ascribing meaning to horrific events and forming factions around it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So we talk about the stuff surrounding this movie later on, and we will. But this movie, I think, does the exact right thing in that it doesn't pick a side, or rather doesn't give the Joker a side. He's on no one's side, as we find out later on in the movie. It's just a thing that he did on instinct, by accident, and later on with intent, but not for any of the reasons the rest of the people in the city think he did it. And
right.
it's I'm just trying to find the right words to describe how important that is. Because this movie could have easily picked a side. I guess, yeah, no, he did it because of this reason. Oh, no, he did it for that reason. But actually, no, not for any of those reasons. And so this is a movie that anyone, whatever side of society you land on, whatever side of the political spectrum you attribute yourself to, this is something that everyone can learn from. This is something that can be interpreted to criticize anyone. It's the South Park method. If you criticize and make fun of everyone, then you make something that can appeal to anyone. You know, when you're not talking about shit jokes. And one person who particularly condemns the attack is Thomas Wayne, who basically goes on TV and says, like, this was done by a person who was envious of the rich, who didn't make something of themselves, and if you're one of those people, like, you're the real clown. And so then the downtrodden of the city sort of take on the, they do the anonymous thing with, like, the V for Vendetta mask, and start wearing clown masks in protests and riots. And it gets rather intense. almost like a lot of people who go on TV nowadays and blurt out stuff they shouldn't really be talking about without proper context cause more problems than they solve.
Yeah, I wonder who we could be talking about there.
Yeah, there's so many different things we could be talking about with that. God, Fox News! Anyway, I think it worse for Arthur, even more so, when funding is cut for the program that finances his mental health professional, who he basically called out for saying, like, you ask me the same questions every single week, but you don't actually listen. And it's... but she basically says, look, I'm really sorry, Arthur, but yeah, we're cut. We're gone. We're funding. And he's like, where am I going to get my medication from? He doesn't get an answer. And now we're talking about the mental health aspect of this, how poorly funded and how poorly run a lot of mental health programs are in the US and in the UK. Like, I'm just going to say, we don't treat mental health the best in this country. We're getting better, I think. The NHS does what it can, but there's so many different ways there's so many better things we could be doing. Again, universal themes. This movie's set in 1981. It could be set at any point in modern history, really.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, though, Arthur starts dating Zazie Beetz. I'm just going to call her Zazie Beetz, not Sophie, because, like I said, her name not mentioned in the fucking movie. Starts dating Zazie Beetz. Like, he goes, like, after he kills those guys, he goes to her in the clown makeup and just starts making out with her immediately in her apartment. She's like, okay, I guess she's into clowns then. Okay, she's into stalkers and clowns. Whatever. You do you, Zazie. You do you. They start going out with each other. She comments on the clown-faced killer. And she's just like, yeah, that's a really good thing he did. You know, it's, one couple of less rich douchebags. And then he says, hey, will you come to this comedy show that I'm doing? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Says to his mum, hey, will you come to this comedy show I'm doing? And she's like, Arthur, don't you have to be funny to do comedy? Oh! Oh, a harsh burn, Mummy Fleck. Jeez. He goes to the comedy show, and unfortunately his disorder kicks in, and he starts laughing uncontrollably whilst trying to tell jokes. And a couple of people laugh a bit, nervous, like, ha ha ha, what's going on with this guy? But then, as the show goes on, he gets a little bit better, and it appears like he's in his element. Or is he? It's left a little bit ambiguous. Meanwhile, Penny this whole time, his mum, has been going on and on about Thomas Wayne this, Thomas Wayne that. It's just like, she just gives him a letter like, hey, send this letter to Thomas Wayne, it's really important. It's like, okay, fine. And he opens the letter, and he finds out that he is Thomas Wayne's son. Oh my god, Thomas Wayne and Penny had an affair years ago. He's the offspring of that affair. Dear God, it's like, holy shit, really? Are they really trying to... And this is like, there's a twist approaching. Most of you probably got it. I got it. I was just like, okay. Are they really going to say that the Joker and Batman are brothers? Are they really going to do that? Do they have the stones to do that? Turns out, no. He basically goes to the Wayne Manor and outside the gates meets a young Bruce Wayne, gets accosted by Alfred, who's played by a guy that doesn't really look like Alfred to me. Like, he has a beard. Like, I'm not saying...
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm not saying Alfred can't have a beard. I'm not saying he's not allowed to have a beard. I'm just saying, like, come on. Really? Like, could you imagine Sean Pertwee, Michael Goff, or, not Michael Gambon. Brain, what's his name? You know his name. Fucking Alfie. Michael. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Why is my brain working? Help me out here, Jillian.
I can't help you out. I don't know names. I only know faces.
No, I know his name, but my brain refuses to cooperate.
What else is he in?
And there's Alfie, Italian Job, anything with Christopher Nolan.
Michael Caine?
Michael Caine!
Oh my god, that was really bad.
That was really
No
bad.
offense.
No, fair enough. How can I forget? I knew his first name, but how can I forget Michael, the most oft impressioned upon actor in Britain?
See, I could have helped you quicker if you had said the Muppets Christmas Carol.
I should have said Mother Christmas Carol, but I didn't because my brain is broken.
Then I would have known.
Anyway, could you imagine Michael Caine though with a beard? I think maybe he has had a beard at one point. I don't care. Point is, it doesn't look quite like Alfred, but also like the joke. I keep on calling him the Joker. Arthur grabs Alfred through the gate. I'm just like, oh, and like kind of hurts him, and then just like leaves. And I'm thinking like, no, real Alfred would not have stood there. Real Alfred would have kicked Arthur's ass. Because ex-services, like, former spy, Alfred knew how to take care of himself. He's not elderly at this point. So, yeah, he knows what he's about. So, he meets Alfred, he meets Bruce, and goes away. And it starts a real downward spiral for him. Like, oh my god, my mum lied to me about this my whole life. Oh my god. And then he's visited by 2 police officers. Except he's not home when that happens. And they talk to his mum. He goes home, finds his mum being taken to hospital. Turns out she suffered a stroke. Oh no. And the detectives meet him at the hospital and they say, hey, look, I'm really sorry about your mum. But we need to talk to you about the train murders. And she's like, look, I had nothing to do with that. My mum's in hospital. Leave me alone. Walks into a door. Like this
As you do.
This movie hits you over the head with just how crap this guy's life is. It's kind of funny. Again, tying to this notion of his life is a comedy, not a tragedy, because he's miserable. And so he's there with Zazie Beetz in the hospital, visiting his mum, just like feeling really down for himself. And then on the Murray Franklin show, he talks about Arthur. Turns out someone was filming him when he was at the stand-up show, and he plays clips of him and makes fun of him, crushing Arthur. And this is one of the few times in the movie where you're 100% on Arthur's side, like. Because here's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, oh no, you could go ahead.
No, it's just because, as someone, like, I've done stand-up, and, you know, it's terrifying when you get up on stage and you do stand-up for the first time. We don't know if he's done stand-up before. He says, like, he's pursuing a career in stand-up comedy. But as far as we, the audience, know, this is the first time he's ever done stand-up. And this Murray Franklin guy, who I can only presume did stand-up at one point in his life, has stand-up people on his show on the regular, and, you know, is a professional comedian, makes fun of a guy doing stand-up for the first time. And it's kind of a dick move.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's also kind of speaks to our culture now and how, you know, talk shows, you know, they'll pick up like a random video that they saw online of people and they'll just like make fun of them without having any idea as to like what sort of consequences that could bring to the person.
Do you know what it is? It reminds me of years ago when Britney Spears was having one of her meltdowns and all the talk show hosts were making fun of her. And the one talk show host that didn't make fun of her and actually made a very good point about her and the nature of drug abuse and stuff like that was going on in her life was Craig Ferguson, who had similar problems with substance abuse. And he talked about how we really shouldn't really be making fun of her and how actually it's really hard living like that. And talked about his own experiences and how hard it was for him. And it's that sort of mentality. You're absolutely right. And how it's like again, with jokes, with any comedy, it's misery. Someone has to suffer. But you don't have to pile on someone who is just starting out. You don't have to do that. It's not fair. It's not fair. And so,
Yeah, no.
and so this absolutely crushes Arthur. He really, 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 like, every point from this point on is his lowest. It's just not getting knocked down and knocked down after knockdown after knockdown, and so Arthur just like had enough of this. So he goes to a public event where Thomas Wayne is attending a screening of a Charlie Chaplin movie. There's clown riots going on outside. He manages to slip past all the security and enter into the building really fucking easily. Like, no effort whatsoever.
Suspiciously easily, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And he confronts Thomas Wayne, in the bathroom, and he says, like, hey, so I'm the son of Penny, you're my dad, what are we gonna do about this? Like, I don't want any money or anything, I just, like, what are we gonna do? Like, hey, how about a hug, Dad? Because he's spiraling. He's not in the right frame of mind. And Thomas gets kind of angry and defensive and tells him, okay, your mum, completely off her nut, completely delusional. She thought we had an affair. We never did. She adopted you. Okay, you're not even her biological son. He's like, no, she isn't. And Thomas Wayne punches him and says, don't ever go near my son again. And, oh God. He goes to the Arkham State Hospital, gets a file off of Brian Tyree Henry, or people who's in this movie, and discovers that Penny was indeed delusional. She fabricated in her mind the idea of the affair to sort of compensate for the reality was that she adopted Arthur and allowed her abusive boyfriend to hurt both her and Arthur, which is why she was, for a small time, committed. And so Arthur's like, oh my God, my whole life was a lie, and now the lie is disproved and been replaced by another lie. He's not a happy bunny. He goes to the hospital, and he does something which shouldn't be so much fun to say, but it kind of is. He smothers his mother.
Yes. Although I mean, I guess we could talk about it later on. I think that there's still like one piece of evidence that actually it doesn't really take a side as to whether or not his mom made the whole thing up or not, because there is another piece of evidence in a little bit later on in the movie that suggests, well, maybe it was all a cover up for the fact that they did have an affair. Like, you don't actually ever get the answer.
Yeah, but even then you have to wonder, like, in terms of age range, like, the guy playing Thomas Wayne doesn't seem that much older than Joaquin Phoenix. We don't get his exact age, we don't get Arthur Fleck's exact age, but you have to wonder about timelines. But I like the idea that there is a sort of an ambiguity to it, that the audience can draw their own conclusions. Because, here's the thing, I like ambiguity. I don't like forced ambiguity, where the movie goes like, well, what do you think happened? Just like, no, just have a little bit of question marks here and there for people to draw their own conclusions. Don't give us nothing and pretend like that's something, but nor should you give us everything and pretend like, okay, that's fine, you don't need to think about it. Just like, because this is a movie where you do need to think about things. You need to pay attention.
Yeah.
So he kills his mum, and he goes to Zazie Beetz' apartment, and she's like, oh my God, what are you doing here? Like, you're Arthur, right? I saw you in the elevator like a couple of months ago. Like, what are you doing here? Uh-oh. Turns out his whole relationship with her in his head. Completely and utterly fabricated. Oh my God, it's a beautiful mind.
Yeah, so I kind of was tipped off that it was all in his head when they first met, because she says to him, like, she calls him Arthur right away, and I'm like, how does she know who he is if they just, like, kind of sort of met in the elevator? Like, they didn't really seem to know each other, so I thought it was weird that all of a sudden she knows exactly who he is, and then that's kind of what tipped me off into thinking, like, oh, is this all in his head kind of thing?
I missed that, because maybe I was distracted by a fly in the cinema, so I didn't pick up on that, so that's why I didn't see it coming. But if they did put that in there, That's a really good thing to put in there to tip people off to it. That's... Oh, that's good. And so he leaves her apartment, and you do wonder, like, is he going to hurt her? We don't know. And now, from this point, we have no idea exactly what it is Arthur's going to do. He's killed people accidentally. He's killed people intentionally. Even those closest to him, we don't know what he's going to do. It appears like he's going to... Like, there's a weird scene where he puts himself inside the fridge.
Yeah.
And that sort of goes nowhere. I can't remember what happened after that. What was the point of that? Was he reenacting that scene from Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull?
I don't know, but I feel like it's sort of like a testament to like how he's fallen, sort of thing.
Yeah, but then we get a scene where it appears that Arthur is masturbating. Like, we see his hands down his pants in the background, sort of out of focus. And he gets a call from the Murray Franklin show saying that Murray actually... They got a lot of good feedback on him showing his clip, and so they're inviting him on the show. Oh, everything's coming up Arthur. Or is it? And... while he's preparing to doing that by putting clown makeup on himself, he's visited by Randall and Gary, and Randall's like, hey, so the police have been coming around? And it's like... So, what's going on there? Because, like, hey, we gotta get our story straight. And Arthur's like, yeah, stab. Brutal stabbing with a pair of scissors. Kills Randall in front of a horrified Gary. And it's like, is he going to kill Gary? 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 He does not kill Gary. He lets him go. But you wonder the entire scene. It's a fucking tense scene.
Yeah, especially what they do with the lock.
Oh, yeah, because Gary's a little person. He can't reach the lock. And so he says to Arthur, like, hey, Arthur, could you get the lock, please? And Arthur's like, oh, yeah, sure. He unlocks the lock, opens the door, closes the door. Hey, Gary, thanks for being a good guy and treating me well. Off you go. And Gary runs the fuck out, gets the fuck out of Dodge. And, do you know what's great about this scene? It's tense because of the cinematography and the acting. They didn't put creepy, spooky music over it.
No.
They didn't do psycho strings. Yeah. They didn't do anything like that. They just let the scene reveal its own tension. And it's fucking amazing. It's a great scene. The guy playing Gary was really good at it. And, oh god, I was so like, is he gonna die? Is he gonna die? Is he gonna die? He doesn't, and it's a huge relief. Then we get a scene with Arthur going down some stairs in full Joker makeup whilst the song Rock and Roll Part 2 plays. We're going to get onto that. We're going to get onto that. But then he's chased by those two detectives. He runs away from them onto a train filled with clown protesters, using the clowns to put some distance between him and them. And one of the police officers accidentally shoots a protester when they have an altercation, incites a riot. They are beaten up to hell. Last we hear about them, they are in critical condition. Arthur, meanwhile, escapes gleefully, like dances away. And in the green room of the Murray Franklin show, he meets Murray. And they have a nice back and forth, and the producer on the show is just like, really, we want this guy? Arthur Franklin Murray is just like, yeah, no, he's fine. Just a couple of things, like we run a clean show, no swearing, nothing off color. Other than that, you'd be great. All good? And Arthur's like, great, thanks so very much. And Murray's like, you got it, kid. And he introduces him on the show. Arthur walks out, and it seems like it's going well until he kisses another one of the guests for an uncomfortably long time. She does not look like she appreciated that. Ugh, creepy. And sits down, and it seems like it's going well at first. And then Franklin's like, hey, got any jokes for us? And I was like, yeah, I got a joke for you. And here's the thing, though. Before this scene, we got a scene where Arthur was sort of like pantomiming in the middle of his apartment, being on the Murray Franklin show. And he says, like, yeah, I got a joke for you. Knock, knock. He takes out a gun and puts it underneath his chin and pretends to shoot himself. We are led to believe that Arthur intends to commit suicide live on air on the Murray Franklin show.
Yeah.
And so he goes on the show, says, knock, knock. Who's there? It's the police, Mom. Your son's been hit by a car and he's dead. And that's a classic Joker joke. He's made similar jokes in the comics before like that. And everyone's like, what are you doing? That's horrible. Like, no. And it's going like, hey, humor's subjective. And it leads him going on to a long rant about how society completely abandons the disenfranchised, how crap the city is, how everyone is crap, how basically everyone is an arsehole. And then he says, oh, by the way, I killed those people on the subway. Those 3 guys, I did that. And he says, like, but I'm not political. I didn't do it because they were rich. I did it because they were awful. And yeah. He basically calls out the rich for being douchebags, the poor for being douchebags. Basically says, like, everyone is awful, everyone's a scumbag, and it's hilarious. He thought his life was a tragedy. Turns out it's a comedy. Even you, Murray, you were an arsehole because you fucking made fun of me. Then he shoots Franklin Murray in the face. He kills Robert De Niro.
It's such a good scene.
It's a fucking great scene. And you have a bit of music in there. The tension is ramping up, but we don't know where it's going to ramp up because we thought that he was going to commit suicide, but now that he didn't, we have no idea what he's going to go. We think we know what he's probably going to do, but it's a masterfully executed scene between Robert De Niro and Joaquin Phoenix. These are 2 phenomenal actors at their best. It's a really good scene. He gets taken into custody. Riots break out all over Gotham after the revelation, because this was all done live. He killed someone live. And everyone goes nuts. Including one rioter who corners the Wayne family in an alley and murders Thomas and Martha Wayne.
I mean, it's not a true Batman movie if you don't see the pearls fly at least once.
Pearls flying everywhere. Yeah.
That's what I always say.
Oh, God. Don't juggle any small white balls near Bruce Wayne, because he will have a panic attack.
Yeah.
And that's one of the it's a great link between the Joker and Batman. The Joker indirectly caused the death of Bruce Wayne's parents. It's great. The Joker is laughing to himself in the police car. It gets T-boned by an ambulance. It's been taken over by one of the protesters. Joker gets lifted out and bloodied and beaten. He turns around to see a crowd of deranged rioters, all in clown gear. And his lip is kind of bleeding, his mouth's kind of bloody. He takes the blood and he uses it to form a nice, big, red smile on his face and dances jubilantly in front of the crowd. The clown crowd. And they could have just ended the movie there. There's one extra scene we get. At Arkham, Arthur has been institutionalized. He's laughing to himself. And the psychiatrist says, "What's so funny?" And Arthur says, "You wouldn't get the joke." Then we get a scene from him walking away jubilantly, leaving bloody footprints behind him, presumably after having killed his psychiatrist, before being chased in a sort of comedic Scooby-Doo-esque scene by some Arkham staff. And that's when the movie ends. With a lovely score and a lovely, like, smile, though you dear, da da da. And so that was Joker. And fuck.
See, I feel like you kind of need the last scene, even though the movie could technically end where you suggested. I feel like you need that last scene in order to hit home the idea that we don't know what was actually real and what was in his head.
That's a good point. Like, it's one of those things where you could interpret it as that, like, everything happened. You could interpret it as everything not happening. But again, it's not that question mark. The movie doesn't give you a question mark. It gives you the possibility for a question mark.
Yeah.
Which is the best kind of thing to do when it comes to ambiguity, as I said. And it's everything is so impactful. Everything, well, almost everything about this movie works. So here's my question. Why the fuck does this only have, at time of recording, 68% of Rotten Tomatoes? This is a much better movie than 68%. This is high 80s, low 90s, easily.
Yeah, it's the way that the media has taken control of this movie. When this movie first came out, in which festival was it? I want to say it was the Venice Film Festival.
I think it might have been Cannes.
Oh, maybe Cannes. Yeah, it got rave reviews.
No, you're right. It was the 76th Venice International Film Festival. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah,
it won the Golden Lion.
Yeah, it got rave reviews, nothing but praise, and then it comes out a couple weeks later, right before the movie is released. All of a sudden, critics are shitting all over it, and then it comes out, and then it gets even more terrible reviews. There's no reason for it, to be totally honest.
There is a reason for it.
There is, but it's a dumb one.
Yeah, it's bad reasons. Like, everyone says that Joaquin Phoenix's performances was brilliant. The tone was brilliant. The plot was brilliant. But the things people have is the violence in it and the portrayal of mental illness. And these are all important things to talk about. So let's talk about it. First of all, the movie theater where the 2002 Aurora, Colorado shooting occurred by that guy pretending like he was the Joker, that douchebag, refused to show it. I completely understand and respect that decision. I think that was the right decision for them to make. I get it.
Yeah.
However, that unfortunately had the unintended side product of making everyone think that they were going to get shot going to see this movie. Like, a lot of people thought that, and I get that, I do. Don't have that problem because I live in a relatively sane country where people don't get shot going to see movie shows. Like, movie shows? They don't get shot seeing movies. That doesn't happen in this country. In America, I can understand the concern about that. That is not the movie's fault. That is the fault of many, many other things. I'm not one of those people that just ascribes gun violence to one single thing with one simple solution. It's a complex problem with a complex solution that you could do, American government, but you're not gonna, because that's a whole other rant. And there's a lot to break down. There is. So yeah, the violence. I hate discussions of violence surrounding movies because
this movie isn't even that violent.
Like, there's a lot more violent movies that get a lot less flack. And here's the thing. This movie's rated 15, for God's sake. The violence in it, it's bloody violence. The scene where he stabs Randall, it's very violent. But
yeah.
And here's the thing. It's the same argument that Quentin Tarantino has been forced to make for years and years and years whilst he's just trying to talk about his fucking movies. The violence. And do you know what is the most violent thing in this world? Real life. Real life is the most violent. And, if you don't like violent movies, that's fine. You don't have to like them. I would never say you have to like this movie regardless of the violence. I would never say that you have to watch this movie, and just ignore the violence. I'm not saying people have to be desensitized with it, because different people have different sensibilities, and if you don't like it, that's fine. That's okay. But that doesn't automatically make the movie bad, nor does it mean that violence shouldn't be shown in movies, or video games, or graphic novels, or whatever. And if you're one of those people that say that these sort of things in the media contribute to violence in the real world, you are a moron. I'm sorry, but you are a moron, because trust me, human beings are fucking vicious bastards that have been killing each other ever since the dawn of time. We are violent. And maybe that's just my skeptical, pessimistic outlook. But human beings are fucking violent. Not everyone is. And that doesn't mean that everyone is automatically bad. It doesn't mean that human beings aren't capable of goodness. But human beings are violent. Trust me. I am far more comfortable watching a movie than I am being around human beings who might potentially be violent. I know that's a very obvious thing to say, but like, yeah. And I'm just kind of sick of this argument because it goes nowhere, because people have definitively proved that there is no direct or even indirect correlation between violent media and real-world violent acts. Some people are inspired by certain bits of media to commit violent things, but that's not, then those things aren't always even violent. Fucking Charles Manson was inspired by Helter Skelter of all things. Like fucking Beatles song.
I'm gonna put on some conspiracy goggles on for a second.
Please do. This is a show for that.
So I'm not gonna pretend like I'm the first person or only person to make this connection or think of this idea, but I have seen other reviewers mention it. I do think that part of the reason why the media has been picking on this movie in terms of violence and, inciting violence is because it does kind of point out the flaws of the media, and it points out the flaws of like the 1% and how our system is broken, and they don't want to face that. So because they don't want to face that, they're trying to spin the movie into making it seem like, oh, it's going to incite violence, when really it's not doing that. It's basically saying, hey, America, fix your fucking shit because you're terrible right now.
It's the classic, oh, well, I don't want to be the arsehole. This movie is saying that I'm the arsehole. It's not my fault. It's the movie's fault, obviously. And because, like I said, the movie doesn't pick sides. At least my interpretation of it was that it didn't pick sides. And lots more stuff we want to talk about. Before we talk about the other stuff, I want to talk about the Rock and Roll Part 2 song. Now, Rock and Roll Part 2 was a song made by 80s glam rock icon Gary Glitter, who is also a massive fucking paedophile. Now, when I found out this song was going to be... I found this actually out from Alex, and she was very concerned about this being the movie. I was very concerned about this being this movie. How familiar are you with Gary Glitter, Jillian?
I don't know who he is.
Gary Glitter is...
It's a big surprise.
Here's the thing. Gary Glitter is infamous in my country because in my country, we have a bit of a problem with people in the media being sexual abusers, especially with minors, and it being covered up. There's a long... And I'm not saying that's unique to my country.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's a United States thing as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In this country, it's come out fairly recently about a lot of people. Now, we've known about Gary Glitter for a long time, but a lot more people who are icons, people who we really, really looked up to and admired, people who grew up loving these people as children, are finding out about all the horrible things he did and how influential people within the media covered it up purely to save face. And so we have strong reaction to this sort of thing. And Gary Glitter was one of the people who we first found out about. We found out for quite a while. I grew up hearing my parents talk about Gary Glitter and how a horrible human being he was. This is a man who has systematically abused children repeatedly, has been sent to prison multiple times for this. And they included his most well-known song in the movie. Now, here's the thing. I believe in separating the art from the artist. Just because Gary Glitter is a paedophile does not mean you can't enjoy his songs. However, I think we could perhaps do without the reminder, at least for here in the UK, of him and the horrible things he's done with the inclusion of this song. However, that's not my biggest issue. The biggest issue is the fact that Gary Glitter might be paid royalties for this movie. So I did a little bit of research. And apparently, Gary Glitter is not going to receive any money for the song being used in Joker. Glitter is currently serving a jail sentence for being a massive paedophile. By the way, he's been jailed in multiple countries. He's been jailed in the UK. He's been jailed in Vietnam, where he basically fled to for being a paedophile. And there were reports initially that Glitter could receive a lot of money for this movie, this one of his songs being in this movie. But the label that owns his songs basically said, this is not true. Gary Glitter is not going to get paid a single penny for this. We don't talk to him. We have no contact with him. He's not getting anything from it. Because they own the copyright to his music, so he's not getting paid any money. Which makes me feel a little bit better. Like, that's the line that they're going with, and I hope that's true. If it's not true, they're arseholes. Gary Glitter is an arsehole. But if it is true, then I guess I could tolerate the song being in the movie. But I didn't know that when I went to see the movie, so that's not necessarily the movie's fault, but also it's just like, hey, here's an idea. Maybe you could pick another song, except for one being done by a famous, unambiguously pedophilic man. Maybe? Just...
I would agree with that, especially since, like, that part in the movie, and this could just be because, you know, I watched the trailer, like, a lot before seeing the movie in theaters. I actually found that song choice to be kind of jarring when I saw the movie, just because in the trailer it looked so good. So I was kind of hoping it would be the song that was in the trailer.
It's a very upbeat song, and they could have easily done... I get it why they picked it. It's meant to be a joyous moment from him. He's just killed Randall. He's about to be chased by the police detectives. So it's a big deal. So it's a very up moment for him. So they went with an up song. They could have picked a different up song. They could have been like that Smile song. They could have picked that. Some songs get repeated a couple of times throughout the thing to emphasize important moments. You could have picked a song they'd done before. Who knows? But that's the least of this movie's issues. Another issue is the depiction of Joker in this movie described as very similar to the mentality of people who commit mass shootings in the United States. People on the online incel community we mentioned earlier. People like that. And the people saying, oh, this movie sympathizes with that sort of mentality.
I didn't get that impression at all. I mean, he still kills people.
That's the thing, you see. The Joker, my interpretation of this movie is the Joker is not meant to be sympathized with. He's meant to be portrayed as what he is. A very disturbed human being. There's a big difference between humanizing someone and sympathizing with someone.
Yeah.
When you sympathize with someone, it's like, oh, you weren't so bad after all. No. The Joker's a bad guy. He does objectively, unconscionably bad things. Here's the thing. A lot of times when horrible things happen, people say, I don't understand why someone would do that. To which I always say, really? I do.
You can. Yeah.
Understanding someone is not the same as condoning them or agreeing with them. I understand why people commit mass shootings. I understand why the incel community thinks the way they do, because understanding someone is the first step in
correcting the problem.
Exactly. If you can't understand something, you can't fix something. I mean, psychologists have to understand and not necessarily sympathize, but emphasize with their patients in order to prescribe the best course of treatment, the best course of psychotherapy. And if you can't understand someone, if you can't fundamentally see where they're coming from on a psychological level, then there's something wrong with you as well as them. You don't have to agree, you don't have to sympathize, you don't have to say, oh, they've got the right idea. You just have to try at least to understand, because they're human beings. And that's the thing with the mentally ill. A lot of times, regardless of what they do, regardless of how they behave, they are frequently and systematically dehumanized. And it's a real problem. And on that note, the portrayal of mental illness. Some people have said that this is not a good portrayal of mental illness. And I would say it is a good portrayal of mental illness. However, it's not great. It's not the best. Some people said this is the best depiction of mental illness ever. Like, no. It's got some great commentary on mental illness. In terms of portrayal of mental illness, it's not great because, and this is a good point, a lot of people said that there are too many depictions of people who are mentally ill on screen who are also violent or killers. And that is a very good point. There are some examples you can point to where people are mentally ill who are genuinely sympathetic and who genuinely have problems throughout the movie. Or who are just simply have something else going on in the movie that is not tied to their mental illness, but they just happen to be mental ill and that's the character. But there are far more examples. Like, we remember the movie Psycho more than remember that movie with Ryan Gosling where he pretends like a sex doll is a real person. And
right.
I'm doing it a disservice by describing it that way, but it's a very good movie. That is a great portrayal of mental illness. But we remember as a society, the zeitgeist is much more focused on Psycho and that image of the disturbed, crazed killer. And it's not fair. I'm not saying you can't do movies like that. I'm not saying that at all. But let's not pretend like this movie is contributing to portrayal of mentally ill people in a positive way. It's not. It's a good portrayal of how the mindset on how someone like that can go through, because let's be honest, there are mentally ill people in the world who are violent or who do commit violent acts. I'm not going to pretend like people who commit mass shootings are completely sane. They're not. But again, they're human. They need to be portrayed. I prefer that the scales were balanced in the portrayal in a positive way than a negative way. And unfortunately, it seems like the scales are the opposite at the moment. And again, that ties into this whole thing of the idea of this movie inspiring real-world violence and people thinking that it's okay to commit these sort of acts. And again, that's not the movie's fault. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help people thinking that. It isn't helped by the fact that there's a portrayal of a person who's mentally ill who is violent.
Yes, I completely agree.
And I guess here's the thing. It talks about the incel community, how people are angry and violent and frustrated. But here's the thing, though. Whilst I do not condone or agree with the incel state of mind, this idea that just because you're angry and frustrated, that means you're owed something by the world. But as a 27-year-old man, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of frustrated with the world right now. I'm frustrated with Brexit. I'm frustrated with the, once again, rise in prominence of far-right ideology. I am frustrated by the way the UK government and the US government handles a lot of things. I'm frustrated with the way society works. I'm kind of frustrated about it. I don't take it out on people. Hell, a lot of this show is based around my frustration about the way people react to Disney movies and other kid shows like that, kid stuff like that, and how I think it's actually kind of a negative thing and people think it's a positive thing. I'm very frustrated about that kind of thing. And I just wish I could kind of snap my fingers and fix everything. And so I understand why some people go down that dark path. And so maybe I think this movie ties into the frustration. Arthur's a very frustrated guy. He's trying to fix his life. He's trying to be happy. He just wants to be happy. His mum says throughout the movie that he was brought in this world to bring happiness to the world. And he wants to be happy. But he says in the movie, he has not had a happy moment in his entire life. It is frustrating. I get it. And he goes about it in a negative way. And that's not good. I think the movie gets that about how we react to frustrations, how we react to society. And we see the violence and the horror that comes from that frustration. A lot of what's going on in the city, like in The Dark Knight, the violence that goes on in the city, the upheaval that goes on in Gotham is caused by the Joker. it's not about the money, it's about sending a message. It's about him wanting to watch the world burn. That's not the case in this movie. Arthur does not want to watch the world burn. He just wants to fix his own life, and the world just refuses to let him. It keeps on beating him down. The violence that goes on in the city is caused by the people who are, inspired by him, but not for the reasons he intended. Maybe this whole movie is a meta commentary on how everyone's saying, oh, this movie's going to inspire violence. But the movie isn't trying to inspire violence. It's just trying to do its own thing and comment on how you shouldn't be inspired by things that to commit violence. There is so much to learn from this movie. This movie has so much more going on that I think people give it credit for. It's not perfect. No movie is. And I get why some people have reacted to it in this way. I'm not saying you have to like it. And if you choose not to go and see it, I get it. I do. There's I do not blame Alex Mirabal for 1 second for not wanting to go and see this movie. But I think there's more to it than some people give it credit for. And it's perhaps a bit emblematic of how we view the media, how the media views itself, how society views itself. And it kind of just shows that famous line, the Joker. Have you ever had a bad day? Because madness is like gravity. All it takes is a little push. Because, as philosophers and sociologists frequently remind us, society, civilization, is 3 lack of meals away from complete and utter anarchy. If you deprive people of 3 meals in a row, that's it. Society crumbles. We have such, as human beings, we have such delusions of grandeur. We think that our infrastructure, our society, our buildings, our culture, our way of life is gonna last forever. It's immovable. It's invulnerable. And it really isn't. We are all, as people, as ideas, so very fragile. And that's because our greatest strength is ourselves and our ingenuity. And that is also our greatest weakness. Is there anything else you want to talk about this movie?
Quick thing, the one nothing to do with what you just said, but the one clue I was gonna mention that ties it back to potentially being a whole cover-up is when he is putting the makeup on his face in his apartment. He has a picture of his mom that's like an old picture, and on the back it says something like your smile is beautiful or something like that, and it's signed TW.
I did see that. I remember that now.
Yeah, so it's like, but at the same time, the way that you interpret like the end of the movie, I mean, this whole entire plot of him potentially being Thomas Wayne's son could just like all be in his head. You don't know, but
again, it goes back to the ambiguity. It goes back to this movie gets what Jared Leto does not. It gets the Joker. It understands his mindset, his ambiguity, his changeability, the way his mind works, finding humor in the bleakness of humanity, being this effervescent, ambiguous psychosis, this psychology that's so changeable. This idea of being a bright, funny, dancing, giggling madman as the world burns around him. And it did it without him having to play to Batman. A lot of the time they're lumped together. They're 2 things that seem to be inextricably linked to each other. See Bruce Wayne in this movie. We don't see Batman. At least not until the very end when he's born in that alley. And it's just him, just the Joker, just this one madman reveling in the joke that is human beings. I think on that note, we're going to end the show. Thank you very much, Jillian, for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
This was a big one.
Yes.
Oh, God. But if you enjoy the show, Capers, please tell your friends, shout from the rooftops. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other super episodes, like our previous DC movies that we've done with Alex Mirabal. I hope she'll join us for Birds of Prey when that comes out. I know she's really looking forward to that. And you can listen to the show on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, or at podcapers.com. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at ap2hyc, or email us at podcapers@ap2hyc.com. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses, those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. Cue the music!